Welcome back to the Finding Success Radio Show. I'm Steve Libman. I'm here with Abe and Justin. And today we have Lauren Plump in the studio. And we're just talking about how to find success, what our definitions are, how we failed at getting into it, and what are the principles that you can apply in your own life that can help you become successful too. I think one of the things that we like to talk about in the show is this replicable? Can anybody find success, or are there some things that you have to overcome and just get blessed with to be able to become successful? I think that it's really more about the persistence aspect and not quitting. How about you guys?
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Totally agree.
So Lauren is managing partner at Morgan Engineering. You also are with Aria Properties. And what else do? You have a couple other things that you have going on, right? You're doing continuing education credits. You're teaching people how to do some different things. So thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. But so go ahead. A little bit about your background, businesses that you're involved in, stuff like that.
A little bit about me. Okay. Morgan Engineering. I joined Morgan Engineering in 2006. I am a partner. Basically, my role on paper is new business development, marketing. If you ask me what I really do, I like to say chief cook and bottle wash, because
Nice.
I think that's what you really do, is whatever needs to be done in the business, whether it's just taking out the garbage or just making sure that business is running as it's supposed to be doing. That's sort of kind of my real role.
And we were introduced to you, so Integrity Holdings has been introduced to you guys for probably 10 years now, doing subdivisions for us and surveys and all that stuff. And I think you guys probably introduced us because you were doing some of their new construction stuff on the Aria Properties side.
Yeah,
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right? So it's so we're all
Full
friends,
circle.
full disclosure. So we're hanging out today and just chatting a little bit about how we've all become successful. But, you know, Lauren has been a great friend and mentor to all of us, and kind of watching their businesses blow up has been really exciting too. So sorry to interrupt, cut you off, but so go ahead.
No, cut me off as much as you like, because talking about myself is not my favorite thing to do. I like to talk about other people. I like to talk about our companies, our businesses. Morgan Engineering has become a successful company. I am a partner in Aria Properties also. That is the building company, mostly single-family homes. We dabble in that. And yes, you're right, I am CE certified to give classes for realtors for continuing education. There's a lot of different things that we like to dabble in. I think that we have come so far in just a short amount of time is because we're just very focused. It's one of those things that you just put one foot in front of the other and you keep on going. You just keep on walking. It's not as though there's a real secret to having a successful business. It's just to be tenacious. It's to just keep on going and not stop. And at the end of the day, when you put your head down on the pillow, did you get everything done? And that's sort of kind of where your mind starts going. It's like, oh, I have to.
Never.
Never. I don't know about you, but I said myself, I used to write sticky notes in bed, but now it's just you pick up the phone and you send yourself emails.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Sometimes I don't even open my own emails.
Well, sometimes I get in the office in the morning, I have no idea what that email was supposed to mean.
Sometimes I send myself an email, but it fell below the priority line. So I'm below my own priority line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes. So let's talk about Morgan Engineering for a minute. In terms of what the services are that you offer, how many employees do you have? What's the top level look like?
Okay. Well, I also want to mention Frank Sadeghi, obviously, the senior partner. He founded Morgan Engineering in 1993. It went through a lot of different phases. He had a partner, and it was a large company, or middle-sized company, successful. Then the partnership dissolved, and it went through a little bit of some rough times, and then we sort of kind of regrouped and came back. When I got on board, we were both working for different people. I was actually working for a builder, and Frank was also. Morgan Engineering running on the side. And then all of a sudden we decided to just stop working for everybody else, focus on building Morgan Engineering. And as it turns out...
Yeah. That happened with the economic downturn, right?
Yes.
Cara Homes went out of business.
That's exactly what it was.
Yep.
Yes.
Same time that we kind of found the beginning of our success. So
Yeah. Well,
I think a lot of companies were incorporated, dug out of that.
So I think that's important to talk about too, right? Because I think a lot of people look at downturns as kind of like really problematic, right? Like the economy is bad, I don't know what to do. But a lot of success comes out of that because a lot of opportunity is born in strife, right? So I think if you are, especially when we talked about this, Abe, right? Like you going to school and wanting to find that consistency in a job and saying, oh, I want security in a job. And then you found that you weren't getting security in the job, right? Same thing with us in economic downturns. Like all of a sudden, this big company that you've been working for that's doing hundreds of millions of dollars is no longer around. And you're like, well, wait, I thought I had security in this other position. So if I don't have security here, why am I working for anybody else? And I know a lot of entrepreneurs that took the bull by the horns during that time frame and said, nope, I'm just going to go make it happen on my own. So that's really cool to hear. I didn't know that. And I mean, a lot of us had similar stories that we were kind of born out of the recession.
Well, it's interesting because when we decided to quit working for companies that, like you said, we thought were secure, and go out on our own and start really focusing on Morgan Engineering, we actually started in the garage of his house.
Oh, the garage.
The garage. Yes, it's the garage story. We really did. And
I'm still in my garage.
well, there you go.
I don't even have an office. So
if you start in the garage, you're destined for success, right?
That's right. Apple, IBM, right?
Yeah. We were kind of in the garage. We were in the bottom of a bi-level in the corner with no heat. So
There you go.
I think that kind of qualifies.
Oh, man. Those are the days.
And then I remembered when we finally got to the point where, okay, we really have to actually look for office space. And we found this little office space that we thought was going to be absolutely perfect for us forever in Island Heights. It was, you could live in the back and you could work in the front, and it was just absolutely perfect. And it was probably not even a year and a half before we quickly realized we were running out of room there.
We're going to need a bigger boat.
Going to need a bigger boat.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Parking was so difficult. I remember your old space there.
And then we bought the building two buildings down, and we actually thought that would just be sort of kind of like maybe Frank's office and a conference room. And what happened is we ended up putting so many employees in there that Frank actually had this little tiny spot right next to the door. So we used to laugh and say that we're just kicking him right out the door because there was no room. So fast forward currently, we're running about 100 employees.
Wow.
We have about 22 field trucks, which is sometimes it takes me back when all the field trucks are in the parking lot, and I come in and I look and I say, oh my goodness, those are all of ours.
Yeah.
It's a little intimidating sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of overhead.
But we cover all of New Jersey, parts of Pennsylvania, parts of New York. And we have a lot. We're blessed because we've done a lot of hard work, a lot of marketing. We have a lot of clients that are just faithful clients, repeat clients that are going to use us no matter what, because they know that when it comes not only to service, I'd like to think that our service is the best, that nobody else can compare to us. But in reality, companies, most surveying engineering companies, that's what they do. They're supposed to be good at their job. I like to think it's more than that for us, and it's because they know that we have their back. We're going to take care of them no matter what. So I know that they're always going to say, no, we're not using this company. We want to use Morgan Engineering.
Yeah.
No, we're not using this.
We've done it. I mean, we've been using you guys forever, and it's like it's not even a question at this point, right? And I don't really care about the price. I mean, we do. It's got to be reasonable. But it's like I know I can call your office and get somebody on the phone that's going to give me an answer right now. Mm-hmm. What's going on with this subdivision? What's going on with this major? What's going on? Hey, what about this zoning? What do you think we can do here, right? It's just from our business perspective, it's all relationship, right? And we've built the relationship over years, but more than that, it was predicated on the backs of the service that we were provided. So, I think clearly 100 employees being in business for 15 years and blowing up and being all over the state, it's more than just doing your job, right? It's got to be the service. It's got to be the relationship. It's got to be answering the phone and answering the questions and not making people feel like, regardless of how big or small of a client they are, right? We're pretty small, but we always feel like we're a big client. So I think that's a testament to, yeah, right. But I think that is a testament to how you guys run your culture there, right? I mean, and culture is a big thing, and your employees follow suit. Like when I walk in, I know you're busy, but you always invite us into the office and say hi and see what's going on. And I mean, that's annoying in the middle of the day when you're in the middle of 90 things. But it's always like, oh yeah, no, come on in, let's chat, and your culture does that too, right? Your COO treats us the same way. He sees us come in, and he's always, hey, come on in, let's chat. So it rolls downhill, and I think you guys have done that a really good job of that with Remax, and hopefully we're doing a good job of that too at Integrity, where the culture is paramount to the dollar signs, right? Like, we want to get business as much as anybody else, but if we can create a culture where all of our clients feel like they're the most important person in the world, then we won't have to worry about the money.
Yeah, I mean, we have an open door policy. Our door's always open. Everyone can come in at any time.
What's a door?
Right.
We don't even have a door.
We have a hole in the
it's never closed. That's why.
But I love that you touch on the culture, because I definitely feel that when I come to your office, it's like almost like a family type of environment, and and I think that's very important when you're growing a company, especially if you're starting out. Having the right culture from the beginning. You'll have these people that'll stay with you to the end, and it's not just about doing, like, oh, that person's not doing the right thing or whatever. It's like, if you're either a boss or you're a leader, right? And if you're a leader and you develop this culture at the beginning, that growth and the hard work and everything that they put in is going to take it to that level that you want to get to. And I noticed that with what you guys have been doing over there.
So that's got to be tough to do with 100 employees. How do you create that culture that gets adopted by 100 different people, all working towards the same goal?
One of the wonderful things, and also one of the biggest issues that we have, is that Frank and I have grown this company organically. I've been out in the field and I've done field work. I went to school for AutoCAD. I've done drafting. I've done elevation certificates out in the field. Like, there's not really any part of, the engineering part. I'm not there. But there's really not anything that goes on in the company that I don't understand firsthand, because I did that. I've been there. Typing up the legal descriptions, basic things like that. When you start like that and then you grow the business, the wonderful thing is you understand what all of your employees are going through, no matter what their position is, because you've been in their shoes at one point or another. So it really makes a big difference, because when they're talking to me, I understand what they're talking about. And if a field crew comes in and they're talking about, it's 110 degrees today, and I didn't get all my jobs done, I thought I was going to pass out. I get that. I understand what they're talking about. The biggest problem with that is trying to disconnect myself from all of that and focus on the bigger picture. Because when you grow it organically, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, it's your baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's your baby.
Yeah.
And as it gets larger and larger, you can't do all phases of that baby. You can't take care of all phases of that baby. So you bring somebody on that's supposed to, help you run the company. And are you supposed to just put out your arms and say, here's my baby, take it? It's very difficult.
It's a process to do that, right?
It's
not a light switch.
You get the shakes sometimes.
Yeah, we've been there.
We got to take that step backwards, and we kind of do it every year with our business. We look at it and say, all right, how can we improve? What can we do moving forward to build the company? And then what do we have to take away so that we can actually accomplish that? So it's, reflection, I think, and then, having the culture, building the people up so that you can kind of grow with, from within. You should be able to trust somebody that's been with you for 4 years to maybe take a step up and be able to take things over.
I don't know if it's not the trusting of it. I think it's the letting go.
Yeah.
Like it's just like I have fabulous employees. I really do. We're so fortunate that we have like you said, it's family, and that's how we feel there. But it's that letting go. It's the letting go, because can anybody do it just as good as you can do
Right.
it? Yes, they can. But are you going to give them the opportunity to do that? And that becomes one of the more difficult things.
And Jocko Willink talks. Do you know who Jocko Willink is? He's a Navy SEAL commander. He trains other Navy SEALs, and he was in Iraq. He had the most successful missions in Navy SEAL history. And he's talking about leadership because he's growing and training leaders. And we were out with his team in California, and they're talking about. So I'm sitting here with like 3 Navy SEAL instructors that are teaching other Navy SEALs how to be SEALs, and one of the guys was a Top Gun flight instructor. So I mean, we're sitting here with some bad dudes talking about leadership, and one thing that I really took away was they're not going to do it like you, right? They're not. It's not going to be 100%. But you know what the Navy SEALs say? If it's 80% and they've adopted it and it's their baby now, then that's okay. And to get to a certain point where you can really be, so what he says is to be in control of everything, you have to be in control of nothing. So to be able to look at your team and say, all right, so Abe, you're going to take this, it's your baby, right? Because when do you have more buy-in? When Steven says, hey, this is exactly how you do it, and you kind of disagree, right? Or when you say, all right, Steve, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to do it like this, though. And I'm like, well, that's 80%. But you're going to have 100% ownership of that 80%, right? Or 50% ownership of my 100%. So it becomes this kind of dichotomy of, can I lead? Can I get them to effectively do their job? And does it do what I need it to do for the company, even though it's not perfect? And that is really tough. I think for all of us as business owners, that is a really hard thing to get through. But hearing Navy SEALs tell me that that's how I have to do it made me feel a lot better about it, at least, right? Because
that's growing pains, I think. So they do have to experience some failure, and you are going to have to take them along and teach them and continue to train them. You know, you won't have to let go of the baby, necessarily altogether, but eventually over time, 2 years, 3 years, you'll look back and you'll say, okay, cool, because allowing yourself to free yourself up to continue to build new things and look to the future, that's where you need to take your company, and that's why kind of we reflect every year. If you don't do that, then you get stuck in the past, and then people leave because they don't have the responsibility. Then they're not growing. It's a vicious cycle, I think. So,
and I read the book Jack Welch, Straight from the Gut. So he ran GE for a number of years. He built it to be the strong company that it is today. He created GE Capital through his years and tenure as CEO, and I always looked up to him as a mentor just because. How do you build a company that's that big? I mean, GE is one of the biggest companies in the world, and they're in everything, right? They're in aerospace engineering. They're creating turbines. They're creating washers and dryers, right? They had a GE appliance, and then they're doing capital markets too. So they're deploying equity into real estate transactions like I do. So I'm like, how can you be the head of a company like that? You can't know everything.
Yeah.
Right? So reading his book and talking about how he's hiring for culture and training for capability was really helpful for me too in terms of growing the business and saying, all right, so he knows that he can't be the expert in aeronautical engineering and dryers. He just can't be. Or plastics, right? GE does plastics too. So it's like, if you can't be the expert in all of these things, how do you effectively manage and grow a successful company that is an expert in all of these things? And so, so that book, Jack Welch, Straight from the Gut, great read on how to be a leader without having to be the expert. So it really took me out of my comfort zone too. So it's interesting to see how some of the greatest leaders don't really know anything about what they're leading. It's predicated on relationship and culture. So
absolutely
interesting.
So we're obviously you got I know Morgan Engineering, especially over the last few years. I mean, they've gone through some pretty explosive growth. You guys acquired some large engineering firms, and what was that like? With taking on, I think you had some transitional where some of those people stayed on but weren't part of your culture, and so how did that feel with that growing and taking on those companies and expanding the Morgan Engineering footprint?
That's a good question. We started out by just buying up companies that maybe they were getting ready to retire, and we wanted their phone number, their website, their records, and things like that. And that was pretty easy. You take all their records. There's a lot of scanning and indexing involved, but it just helps because then you have more control over the different areas that you're working in if you have older records. So that made a lot of sense. And then we decided, okay, now there's opportunities. There were a couple of companies that we were actually bringing the whole company on board, buying out the company, interviewing the employees, taking them on, bringing on the prior owner, And that was a challenge. That was definitely a challenge because if you take somebody who ran their own company for the past 23, 25 years, and they were the person in charge, and then all of a sudden now they're an employee. And that whole transition and how to make them a part of your team when it was always their way. But now then there's the Morgan way. And trying to merge the two of them was a challenge. I think sometimes it still is. But I think that giving people their own space and taking what they are really good at and letting them focus at that, you just find their strengths. I think that's what we try and do with all of our employees is just find their strengths, because some people, you put them in one position and you think they're going to be fabulous at it or, really blossom in it, and then you realize that this is not a good fit for them. It doesn't mean that they're a bad employee. It doesn't mean that they don't belong working at Morgan Engineering. It just means that maybe we've put them in the wrong position.
Right, wrong seat on the bus.
Wrong seat on the bus, exactly. So trying to find out the place to put them so that they can flourish is sometimes, it's not the challenge. It's a work in progress. You just have to keep on working on it, and that's one of the things that we like to do. Like, we'd like to hire younger people, especially as we get older. We want that next generation to come in. So we're always trying to hire the younger people and train them, and find out: do you want to learn how to draft? Do you want to do AutoCAD? Do you like engineering? Do you want to be out in the field and be a field crew, a party chief? What are your goals? And some people are definitely, they want to be outside. They don't want that job behind the desk. And some people are total opposite. I mean, I talk about our field crews, what our field crews go through all the time. And I just don't know if we ever give them enough credit. They have been...
They get all the variables. They never know what they're walking into.
They've been chased by bears and
dogs.
Snakes and dogs, pit bulls in Jersey City all day long. There was a goat in the backyard in Bergen County once. And, you think goats are cute, but, they have that really hard spot in between their ears and their forehead. And when the field crews came in the backyard with the equipment, that goat didn't think that they...
rammed?
Yes, exactly.
Unbelievable.
They were pinned up against a house by a wild turkey.
Sounds of turkeys.
They're out there in 110 degrees. They're out there in 20 below. They're out there today, and it's not nice out. It's warm,
right?
But
it's raining.
Pretty windy.
It's raining.
Yeah.
They get chased by irate clients or neighbors that they don't understand what they're doing.
Get off my property.
Get off of my property. They have the police called on them. So they're very special, but it's a niche, and they really love it. I mean, they have their own. There's on Facebook. There's a page, and it's just for field crews.
Oh, really?
Perfect.
It's just for field
share
crews.
Their stories.
Share their stories.
Yeah,
And
I
since
love
I
that.
have been a field crew, I am a part of that page, and I go on there and I listen to them and I watch what they post, and it's
that's cool.
and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a
Totally
different
amazing.
personality type too, right? Like that's this personality type that doesn't want to sit behind the desk, that
Correct.
can't do the same thing every single day. So they like it because
love
it's
it.
different and changing, when somebody else with a different personality type would hate that. So, so let me ask you a question. I want to back up for just a second. So as you're finding the right fit for certain people and you're going through that pain, so as a small company, when we were smaller 10 years ago, that was really scary, right? Like, we didn't have necessarily... I guess the question is, as you've grown and you've become more financially stable, is it easier to give the people the time that it's going to take for them to find the seat on the bus versus when you were small, maybe more nimble, but less financially stable, where, even though you love that person, it was costing you money to have them in the wrong seat? Because we've kind of experienced some of that too, where as we're growing and we're becoming more financially solid, we can let people kind of find where they want to sit on the bus. When before, it was like, you don't fit, you got to go. And it's hard, but we don't have the excess cash to burn to let you figure it out in the company. Have you found something similar to that?
I think so, yes, because it's a bigger bus. There are more seats. So there are a lot more options. Where
Right.
before, it was the minivan.
No, you're right. No, that's a
No
great
room.
analogy because sometimes I only had 4 people, right? I only had 4 seats on the bus, and if you didn't fit that seat, I didn't have anywhere else to move you. So it was just a virtue of there's not enough seats, period. Right? When now, I think you're right, as we're expanding the bus, and we can say, well, maybe you fit over here yet, right? And so that's a great analogy.
I remember when we had that minivan, and we were all in one room together, and it was summertime, and that's our really busy time, and the phones were ringing, and there was one employee who is still with us after all these years, who is very detailed, introverted, and had his head down, and he's working on the computer, and he's drafting or whatever he was doing, and the phones are ringing, and I said, pick up the phone.
Can you answer the phone?
And I watched, and it was a very good lesson, definitely a good business lesson. I watched his face turn beet red, like, oh my goodness, you want me to pick up the phone and talk to somebody? And that's where it becomes one of those, the bus is bigger now, he doesn't have to pick up the phone.
You go sit in your office and close the door.
Talk to your computer.
You don't have to be terrified to answer the phone.
But, it's funny because after all these years later, he has really found a niche with us at our company. And if you have any questions about elevation certificates or anything else, he is my go-to person in the office. And he has actually been doing some speaking engagements for me. When, different companies want to bring somebody in who can explain about elevation certificates. And here's this person that couldn't even answer the phone. And now all of a sudden, because he's so knowledgeable in
He's
his
become the
subject,
expert. Yeah.
he has a different seat on the bus.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
It is.
So obviously we touched on some Morgan Engineering, right? And you mentioned earlier about Aria Properties, which obviously we have a relationship with you guys on that. What got you guys into doing the surveying to wanting to kind of dabble into potentially building?
Welcome back to the Finding Success Radio Show. We have Lauren Plump in the studio today, and we're talking about engineering, building, but really we're talking about what we talk about every week, which is success. How do we find it? How do we get it? How have we overcome challenges to get there? And you guys have had no shortage of challenges that you've overcome and no shortage of success. So thank you so much for being in the studio with us today, and it's really fun hearing about your story.
It's a pleasure to be here. I've known all of you for some time now, and there isn't one of us in the room who doesn't work hard and doesn't strive to be better.
Yeah, every day, right? It is a journey, as they say. It's not a light switch, and everybody, it's funny, I have friends and family that are now looking at us going, wow, you guys really got successful fast, right? Overnight success 15 years later. So we know it well. So just before we left on the break, we were talking about Morgan Engineering and kind of the growth that has had, and now you have a couple other companies too that you're either actively involved in or just getting started. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What was the transition like from the engineering company into the building world? How do you make that leap?
That was actually an easy leap for me and for engineering also, because what would happen is, we would see a piece of property and it would have a house on it, but maybe the house was sat all the way to one side and it was subdividable. So the engineering part was easy. We just subdivide it. The building part sort of kind of goes back to my roots. I'm a carpenter's daughter. My father's shop was in my backyard. I remember there was a hill, a mound, I guess it was. When you're little, it was a big hill, but it was all the sawdust from the wood shavings, and I used to play in the sawdust. It's one of those kind of things. So when we're building a house, the first time I walk the house is when it's just framed, because
You smell the sawdust, brings it right back,
I smell
right?
the wood, and I'm a little girl again, and it's just a wonderful thing. But it's also one of those things that I guess growing up in that kind of environment, I walk a house with Justin and Abe as soon as it's framed, and we're moving walls, and we're changing things on the fly because we can see it. Most people can't really visualize it until it's built. We always say the house sells as soon as the sod is down, because a lot of people just can't imagine the whole picket fence, white picket fence thing until they see the white picket fence up. But I love that part of it. I absolutely love it. And yes, I do love the smell walking through all the time. But that's become our second baby, our second passion. There's nothing better than, well, it's a twofold thing. Sometimes you're building and you have a buyer already, so you're dealing with a client through all of the stages. And they're picking out colors, and they're picking out the cabinets, and they're picking out all of these different things. And I just always pray that they have good taste.
Right. Yeah, it's difficult, right, to watch other people picking that stuff out.
Yes.
When that's kind of what you do.
Yes, and just let it get to closing and let them close.
And be happy.
Don't let the deal fall through, because then we're stuck with their choices. But, it's a lot of fun picking out all the different colors and the granites and the quartz or whatever and piecing it all together. But the really best part is, and I mean, you all know this, is the day after it closes. The day after it closes, because, then you see the moving trucks going in, and you see the decorations going up for the holidays, and you see the lights on and the blinds up, and you realize that you built somebody a house.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool feeling.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, if you've bought a flip from Integrity Properties, we probably have driven by during Christmas to see your kids decorating the tree, and just because it becomes a part of just kind of your life, right? I mean, you put in the time and the energy and the effort, and when you're picking out granite, for me, I don't care, right? I'm like, all right, well, that's nice, this looks good, whatever. But when it becomes a home for somebody, then you recognize, like, wow, when we didn't cut that corner and we spent the extra 10 grand here or the extra 2 grand here to make sure that it was right, this is why, right? This is the family that we did that for. And that was cool for us when we were flipping houses. And then, I mean, you guys have built how many houses in the past however many years?
Well, that goes back to how did we start? We were doing 1 house a year, 2 houses a year, and we would just take our time. And
so you were just doing single specs to start.
Yes.
You'd find the lot, you got it for the right price, and then did you hire a general contractor to come in, and then you guys just manage that general contractor, or did you bring
Correct.
that in-house? Or
Correct. We always hired a general contractor to run it. Basically, we were the energy behind it, and this is the direction we're going, and this is the model we're building. And then you just sort of oversee everything that's going on. You have to, when you're building a house, you have to be on the ground. You have to have your feet in the house through all the different stages to make sure that everything's going correctly. It's one of those things, yes, you do have a general contractor that is running the show for you, but you still need to have your input. And you just have to make sure that everything is running according to plan. In the beginning, when we were doing a couple a year, it was easier. Now we're doing more along the lines of 40, 50 a year. It's a little more difficult. So now we have weekly construction meetings, which Justin and Abe are always a part of with us. And we go over, a house by house. Where is this one? Where is that one? Do we have a contract on it? When is the closing date? And it becomes more of a different kind of process. Has everything been completed? And do we have that CO?
Right.
The famous CO.
Where is it?
Where is it?
Why haven't they signed it yet?
Yeah, I think one of the things that separates you from most builders is that a lot of builders, they get their plan from an architect, right? And an architect has a vision of like this house that he thinks is going to be great. And some of these builders, they buy that plan and they build the house and they're like, this is it. And it's just like you walk in, it's just like, why did they put this here? Why did they do this? I think working with you and kind of understanding what a lot of the buyers want and needs are, been able to fine tune certain plans that meet and cater to the masses. Instead of having this one plan where it's just, what are we doing with this? So it's been great working with you over the years, and being able to kind of redline certain plans and figure out different things that kind of meet the needs for the most. That makes it more of a sellable product. We want to be able to sell the house. We want to be able to, make these houses homes, like we were talking about before. Instead of just this is what I'm building, and there's been a lot of builders that we bring these buyers into these other homes, and these builders have this bullish mindset where it's just like, That's it. This is all I'm doing. I don't care, But it's been awesome to see how you guys have been able to grow from where you guys started just doing a couple of houses to where you guys are now, where we have a design center, we have multiple meetings, and kind of figuring out the process. So
We have a couple of new projects coming up. I guess I wanted to just touch on those. We're going to be finally launching. I think this project was 3 years in the making.
Pioneer?
Well, Pioneer.
That's longer than 3 years.
Pioneer, which is in
That's
brick.
gotta be 5
We
or
also
6
have
years.
another project coming up that's going to be in wall.
yeah.
And then we have another project coming up that's in Manchester. And all three of those, I think, are fabulous projects.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm partial to the wall project.
Of course.
We may or may not have helped. So yeah, those are a lot of. And how many home sites are on each of those projects? It's 15 for wall.
It's
Bricks 15.
for wall. 15 seems to be the number.
Yeah,
I'm
Bricks
not sure
15, and then
Manchester
Manchester's
might be right
13, 12, 13.
Yeah, I
Right
think
around the same.
Manchester's about 13. Yeah.
So not bad, right? 42, 43 homes.
That seems to be our niche, at that size subdivision, anywhere between 10 and 15, 16. It's manageable. I don't know if we're ready to take on the K-Hovs.
The megas.
No.
Yeah, the 120.
Multi-year
Units.
projects, yeah.
4 phases and
Yeah,
a lifetime. Yeah. I mean, I know people do really well with that stuff, right? But I mean,
That's more systems.
I mean,
yeah.
this is what you were just talking about before when we started was, you know your niche, you're laser focused on it, you're tenacious about getting it done, and also know kind of what you like to do, right? I mean, I look at 150 lot subdivisions, and that's not exciting for me. I'm not like, oh yeah, I want to tie up my life for the next decade and see how it goes,
Right.
I mean, it's just not I know other people that's very exciting for, right? But 10 to 15, it's great, right? You're pulling a cul-de-sac out or two, and you can kind of really watch it kind of grow and take shape. And so I think the biggest thing about being really successful in the niche that you choose to be in is you got to like what you're doing too. And you're not going to like it 100% of the time, don't get me wrong. But if you like what you do, right, and you're not overwhelmed by it, then you have a much higher propensity to be tenacious about it, to have that fortitude to stay with it because you're enjoying it. If you stuck me in something that I hated, am I going to be persistent about it? No, right? But to know kind of where your lane is and to just stay there and be happy with it. And, we all want to grow, but we want to grow where we want to grow, not where everybody else thinks you should grow. And I think that's a big takeaway for me when we started flipping houses. I mean, we were flipping 15 houses a year, and then we were flipping 175 houses a year. And what I did was I built my company to somebody else's standard. I saw what somebody else was doing and going, that's what I think success looks like. But that wasn't my version of success, right? It was theirs. So you don't have to build somebody else's business. You have to build your own. And you have to know what you like about it and how you sleep well and the lifestyle that it affords you and all of these different things. But you have to choose that. Nobody else can choose that for you. So it's good to hear that, you know your lane. You guys you're going to stay in your lane.
She's got a couple lanes.
Well, a couple lanes.
Yeah.
And stay in all of
it's
them.
just crazy to step back and even realize that somebody's building a huge engineering firm and then also, for locally, a huge building company at the same time. And then there's more.
And then there's more. And then there's more. It is. I guess it is one of those passions, and it goes back to who we are. I guess in our core, we just want to be busy all the time. We want to be doing something all the time. We want to make today count. It's one of those things. You just want to keep on going. I think that's. I mean, even if I think about it, even if I go back and I look at my hobbies outside, let's put all the companies aside and let's just
I know what your weekend hobby is. Walking the houses.
Walking, well, that's true. It's to
Yeah.
walk the houses on the weekends.
Frank
But,
doesn't take any days off.
I mean, I sit on the board for the Salvation Army, and I sit on the board for Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and I sit on the board for the Sailing Foundation in Barnegat Bay. And just recently, trying to find a way, even with those organizations, recently I think the direction we're going is the Sailing Foundation, along with help from Ocean County College, we seem to be making a path where we believe starting this summer, we're going to be able to get the kids from Salvation Army out on the water
Oh, cool.
to show
Nice
them
connection.
something different. Give them something, because as a sailor, that's one of the things that it sort of changes your life forever. It gives you a different perspective. It gives children, especially kids, a sense of being in more control of themselves. It's like you can't drive a car until you're 17, but you can get in a little lofty boat when you're 8 years old, and you're going in your own direction. You're going where you want to go. You're free.
Yeah.
And it teaches you a lot of different life lessons. So we're pretty excited about putting this program together. It's just about whatever it is that you're involved in, whether it's Morgan Engineering, Morgan Municipal, Aria Properties. It's just trying to make a difference. It's just trying to do the best job that you can while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what comes back down around to why we're successful in our businesses, because we're just trying to put your best foot forward, and you're just trying to make a difference, make it happen, make something happen.
Yeah, and I think
Sometimes
as
it's good.
entrepreneurs, you are always trying to build something or better something, right? We're problem solvers naturally. I
Right.
think most entrepreneurs are problem solvers, right? So I know we both sit on the boards of our churches, and I sit on the boards of some nonprofits as well. So it's Justin and Abe. I mean, so what's interesting about getting involved in those nonprofits, right, is you're using a skill set that you have in business, and you're applying it to now a very different type of organization. But like, I love doing that because I think I can help. You have to take the business hat off and put the volunteer hat on when you go and do these things, because it's very difficult to lead and manage a team of volunteers than it is to lead and manage a team of people you're paying, right? But very similar in terms of how to get people on board and how to get them behind you to say, oh yeah, this is a great vision, let's go execute on this. But I think we have a lot to offer to these nonprofit organizations because we can problem solve, right? And we've had to do it literally to pay our bills and to keep our families fed. So now we get to offer that back up to these nonprofits, and it's really cool to see the things that you can do. I mean, to get, Big Brothers and Sisters and Salvation Army kids to get out on the water it's incredible, right? I mean, but we live at the Jersey Shore. Why wouldn't that be something that's open to those kids? Well, typically it's a financial issue, right? Or it's just some of these other issues, and you can overcome those hurdles and say, yeah, but now we're teaching you accountability and self-sustaining life lessons, right? So that's really cool. I definitely share more with us as that continues to grow, because part of what we're doing as Integrity Holdings is we're giving equity into nonprofits for every deal that we end up doing. Tom's River Field of Dreams is one of the recipients of one of our deals, and we're giving away literally hundreds of thousands of dollars per deal. So we'd love to talk to you more about that offline to see if we can help.
Definitely
Very
would
cool.
love to talk to you offline about that.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
And the other thing, just to touch on the nonprofit, the other part of it is that we are successful, and we are successful business people, but you go and you join an organization like this, and you are in a room filled with people that are successful. And the knowledge that you gain from being a part of that organization, it's like, yes, you're there to give, but you're also getting a lot back. There's a lot of wisdom in those organizations.
Yeah.
100%.
Right. And it's applicable to all these different facets of your life, right? So if you're humble enough to come expecting to receive and expecting to give as much as you can too, I mean, there's been just one-off conversations that I've had with some really smart people that I've taken and applied to my marriage, and taken and applied those life lessons to our business. And those are really impactful things, because the wisdom is, and what I love about it is all of these people, none of them will say, oh, this is my own brilliant idea, right? They're all just sharing things that we've all kind of accumulated knowledge from one another over the years, which is what I've really found is the more successful people get, and not all of them, right? But maybe the people that have been attracted into my life especially they're really humble about how they've gotten there, right? I don't think any self-made millionaire has been like, well, I got there because I'm a grinder and I'll outwork you. Maybe a little bit of that, right? But I think every one of us realized that we've gotten a lot of hands up and a lot of help from a lot of people to help us get to where we're at. And that's why I think a lot of them turn around and try to give back, is because they recognize they couldn't have done it on their own, right? And I don't think you really can. Success is a team sport. So lots to unpack. Really good stuff. So as we're talking about nonprofits and all these other things, right? We were talking a little bit during the break about kind of this purpose-driven life and this purpose-driven lifestyle, and clearly it matters to you as you're involved in some of these nonprofits and things like that. So beyond making the business work and making your employees successful, there's something behind that makes you want to, have and deliver more purpose in and around your life. So where's that come from, and how do you execute on that outside of just sitting on boards and things like that? Like what drives you to get there?
Well, I think that is one of the things that it's an underlying thing, is that you want every day of your life to be meaningful. You want your life to have purpose. And I'm just going to take this opportunity to give, and I believe Sarah Greenberg, I believe technically she is my second cousin. She is my cousin's daughter. So with that cousin once removed, second cousin, not so sure about the way that really works.
We're close.
But I'm very proud of her. She has an article published in Psychology Today on their website, and it basically says 11 ways to lead a life of meaning. And basically it says what science tells us about the value of purpose and how to find more of it. And it's articles like this, when you read them, that you realize that us people who are determined to make a difference every day, to do the right thing, we're creating a path for ourselves. And you're not even certain, you don't even realize you're on that path until you get there. You're just, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to be the best me I can today. I'm going to do random acts of kindness because it's going to make me a better person. Talks about the gaps that are out there between living a purposeful life. I want a purposeful life, but am I doing the things that every day that is going to make me feel like I have a purpose in life? Or am I just talking about it? So there's a lot of...
I just read a book, Atomic Habits, and we've talked a couple times about it on the show, where it's valuing your success not based on whether or not you've reached this goal or not, right? But am I 1 degree better today than I was yesterday, right? And it's putting those habits in place that get you to achieve that level of success or that level of just accountability. Like, hey, if I want to live a purpose-driven life, what am I doing today that's tangible, that I'm holding myself accountable to, that will lead me to look back and say, that was purposeful, right? So that intentionality is really important. And I think people think that they're going to grow automatically. I think, we go to school, we grow up, we're being taught, right? We're learning, and from literally birth until you graduate college, you're getting force-fed all of this information. And I think once you leave college, you have this decision to make as to whether or not you're going to be intentional about continuing your growth, because you've just been growing automatically for the last 20-something years, right? And I had a little bit of a gap after college and to when I started reading and like becoming really growth-oriented again, because it wasn't happening, and I was like, man, I don't know why I'm not just growing anymore. Well, because you're not getting force-fed that growth. So you had to become intentional about it and say, well, I'm going to do this today to make sure that I am better tomorrow than I am today. Right? But not everybody has that aha moment, right? A lot of people go through life and they never have that moment again. They just think, yeah, this is where I landed. So interesting point that they bring up, to be just intentional about the day-to-day.
And I think it's one of the last things that she talks about in here, and that's to remember to breathe. And I think that's one of the things that we all have to remember to do every once in a while, is to just sit back and breathe. And like you said, Justin, you were talking about reflecting, or Abram, you were talking about reflecting. And that's one of the bigger things that we have to work on and make sure we take the time to take that breath and to look at where we have been, what worked, where we want to go, what is the next plan, where do we want to take our companies, and what we want for ourselves personally, right?
Do you have a process for that? Do you guys get together every quarter or every year and look back and look forward and write down some different things? How do you all handle that?
Well, us together, I mean, we do meet quarterly, but I mean, we are literally talking every day, nonstop. So we're, for the most part, always on the same page. But I think the way we look at it is, in August, that's kind of like the end of the year for us. September is kind of when I take that step back. I look at kind of what happened, what we did, and I want to then kind of, debrief, as you said, and figure out what needs to change, for me to have a more successful year the next year. Because it takes time to take a step back and then come up with that plan and then implement it. And I mean, maybe that's not even enough time, because you only have 3 months until you get to the point where you're in 2020. But really, your 2020 was set up way beforehand.
Right.
So taking that time to reflect, because once it's here, and now it's kind of reactive. So I think the goal with us and what we're doing and what we're building is to try to always be proactive. And try to get ahead of things, as much as possible. And again, it's taking a step back and maybe saying like, I need to have somebody else handle things for like a week so that I can debrief and then I can analyze and then I can look at things and maybe interview people from within the company and figure out what their feedback is and what their growth has been. So it's maybe something, if you're not doing it, that's a quick tip.
I thank you. I always find that I guess our best corporate discussions as to where we're going are basically go away on vacation. Go away on vacation because that's when you're disconnected. Exactly. Let somebody else run the ball.
I like
at
that
the
advice,
office.
by the way. Yeah. Big fan of that.
I need to do that.
Go on vacation
Don't
because
do that.
that's when everything clears and you get to look outside the box and you think more clearly as to what direction you need to focus on. What needs your attention, which direction do you want to go, and what is your end goal, and how do you get there? I mean, I think that's the best time is when you're disconnected. It's hard to do, even if you set up a meeting, if you're in that office, it's still hard to think outside of the box. But I think that once you're away and you do disconnect yourself as much as we allow ourselves to be disconnected.
Right.
Because even when you're away, who does not have their cell phone on and who is not checking their emails?
Right.
Let's
Well, I'm
recharge.
starting to get better at it because I'm making promises to my wife and kids about when I'm allowed to be on those things. So I set times so that I don't just become constantly on it, right? And we have little kids, so it's a little bit different. So we have to be engaged a little bit more. But, it's like that visual of like putting your head down and just grinding, and then all of a sudden you get to the top of the mountain and you're like, yes, I made it to the top of the mountain. You look around and you're alone because everybody else is on the top of the other mountain. You went to the wrong mountain, right? So it's important to be able to assess, hey, are we all going together? One thing that we're going to take from Bill Gates does this every year. He goes away for a week in a cabin by himself. He brings like 50 books, and he just sits and thinks by himself. So we're implementing this with our management team. Me, Travis, and Sean are going to go away for 3 or 4 days. We're going to get separate either rooms or cabins. We're not going to stay together. We're going to get together just for lunches and dinners and kind of talk about what we're thinking about and really just kind of hermit and think, get creative, write down ideas, and then come back. And we're going to see how that works. I mean, if the smartest billionaires in the world are doing that, I want to replicate that. So I think we are just about ready to wrap up. Lauren, thank you so much for kind of sharing your story with us. We've seen it from, being able to be partners with you on a lot of things, but we definitely got a lot deeper today than we have in the past. So I really appreciate you sharing your story. And shout out to Frank. You guys have been great friends and great mentors to all of us around the table, and we're excited to see your continued success. And thanks again for just showing up and chatting with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. Anytime. And thank you, listeners, for listening to the Finding Success radio show. Hopefully you have some tips and tricks to go out and replicate your own success. And as you can hear, we're not just talking about the money. We're always talking about the purpose behind it. So find your why and go after it tenaciously, and you will find your own success.